I call to order the November 12th, 2008 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. May we have the roll call, please?
Agency members: Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian. Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report, please?
Agenda for the November 12th, 2008 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, November 6th, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is the approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
Minutes have been moved and seconded. If there are no corrections or objections, they will be approved as submitted. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited time, is not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for an investigation and report.
I have 2 cards. The first one from Herbert Milano, followed by Mike Milano.
I believe those are on the items, on the actual item 6A.
6A. Okay, both of them.
Are they
okay.
not?
If there is no one else wishing to submit a card for oral communications, I will close oral communications and move to item 6.
Item 6 on the business agenda is Director of Development Services at 6A regarding discussion of the Americana at Brand project objectives and evaluations of the direct and indirect financial impacts. At 6A is a report only.
Thank you. Mr. Lanzafame?
Chairman, members of the agency had asked for us to put together a report on the benefits of the Americana brand, specifically the financial benefits as well as the objectives. We put together a quick PowerPoint for you. With the amount of data that we had available, this report does 2 things. Kind of gives you a preliminary snapshot, but also sets up how we think in the future you might want to have this report brought to you. As we've mentioned several times over the course of the redevelopment agency, there is a lot in play when you are doing redevelopment, and it's more than just maximizing profit like you would see in a private enterprise. For that reason, we think it important to move past the cost-benefit, or as we've termed, investment in, revenue out analysis, and look at some of the more socially or public policy objectives that you had established. For that reason, our report is broken up into 3 areas: the public policy objectives that the agency had set for the project, the direct financial impact, that is what's being spun off the site itself, and then try and give you some idea of spin-off impacts. There was 12 objectives that the redevelopment agency had established. These were all noted in the CEQA document. We've summarized them here into these 4 bullet points. Many of the objectives deal with the finished product itself, and so for that reason, like a central gathering place. We finished the project, there is a central gathering place, and so we would see that objective achieved. In 2004, I should say that many of those objectives all of the 12 are listed in your report, and then we've tried to tie them to each of the characteristics of the project. In 2004, when we approved this project, we had the internal auditor review some of the economics and provide a report as part of that approval process. In that report, it looked at sales tax and property tax. Those are the 2 direct financial impacts that we can really pinpoint. We also looked at value of the open space, maintenance costs, and then revenue projections. When we're looking at that today, we have identified, obviously, some limitations. The project has just been open 6 months, 8 months. It's not yet stabilized. Much of the information is only now becoming available. What we have is only 2 months out of the quarter. And there really hasn't been enough time to project any kind of trends. Nonetheless, we have put together the information in terms of sales tax with May and June being reported, and again, not by all of the stores and not all of the stores being open, the project generated $253,000. If you took a straight projection, 12-month projection from that, it would be $1.52 million, which would exceed the estimate that we had in 2004 by a little over 11%. Again, this doesn't adjust for the holiday season or the current economic climate that we're experiencing. It's just a straight projection. Property tax, likewise, some preliminary assessed values, $271 million, which would spin off about just over $2 million annually to the redevelopment agency in tax increment. We had assumed or estimated just under $1.5 million, so it exceeds that projection. Again, these are going to be revised. It's a preliminary number. We're certain that some are going to be appealed, as well as it will include some additions for tenant improvements and the condominiums when they are sold. We've included, because it was in the auditor's report, we've included the open space maintenance and participation. What we tried to give you back in 2004 is the cost to maintain an acre of open space. We used what Parks, a number that Parks gave us. It's about $120,000 an acre. There's 3 acres of open space, and it's a simple math. The developer is obligated to maintain and program that space. And so, again, the reasoning was that's a cost that the city doesn't have to spend to have that amenity. And then finally, agency participation. That is something that we've included. If the developer hits certain hurdles in the project, then we start to split the revenue 50-50. That hasn't happened certainly in the first 2 months or 6 months, and we were being very conservative and did not attach a number to that in the auditor's report. As we go forward with the project, every year the developer will give us costs and their return, so we'll be able to track whether there is any participation that's coming off the site. The spin-off benefits or indirect benefits, this is a little bit more difficult. It was not something that was identified in the auditor's report. However, we think it is part of the reason the agency invested in the project. And so we have listed some things, some measurements that we think, indicators, that might help us set some trends. These 6 here, again, sales tax and property tax are very easy for us to track. Vacancy rates and lease rates, we can use certain programs that are out there already in resources. The construction permits and building permits is something that we're trying to break down geographically so that we can pinpoint what's happening in and around the Americana and as you go further out. Again, very unscientific, but we've tried to track taxable sales to give you an idea of context of the Americana and where it is. The state and the county are down in almost all areas, while Glendale fared much better. The department stores were down a bit. All groups were basically flat. So when the county and the state are going down, Glendale is flat. We can't say that it is directly attributable to the Americana, but it's a piece of information we can give to you.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, I've asked him to go back to that slide because although Bill's correct, generally flat, what we do see in those first quarters, though, and I think he mentioned in the staff report, in all likelihood because of Target and possibly some amount of Americana, family apparel, women's apparel in particular, actually up considerably, surprisingly.
Yeah, and I should say that these are the categories that closely match what is in the Americana. All groups would be everything: restaurants, fuel, building, everything.
And of course, department store, a big piece of the Galleria, not showing nearly the level of decline that the county and state is. Now, can you draw a direct correlation? Probably not. But it is some indication that something's happening there that is different than what's happening in the county and different than across the state.
The sales tax, we've broken this down by geographic region. We have included Montrose because it is an area that is far away from the Americana, and we tried to have a control group, if you would. But we've broken down by block on Brand Boulevard, the Exchange, the Galleria, Marketplace, and then you see the Americana at the bottom. Again, these would be something that we can look at as a benchmark and then go forward. Same thing applies. Can we say that the 100 block of North Brand is up because of the Americana? I don't think that we have that data to specifically tie it, but you can start to look at trends and analyze those trends.
I have a question. Galleria 1 is up by almost 16%. Galleria 1 would include Target, J.C. Penney's, and Macy's, I guess, right? And how about the Apple Store? Is that in Galleria 1? Or
The Apple Store is in Galleria
It's
1.
in Galleria 1.
And actually, most of this bump we would probably attribute to Target, because there was Rob May and then Target came in. But Target's decision, and it's something we'll talk about in a minute, Target's decision is that partially because of the Americana. Again, nobody can make that direct link, but anecdotally, you can look at it. We also wanted to look at lease rates and vacancy rates in the area. Can we set a benchmark and then see how those change over time from the point pre-Americana and post-Americana? We see a bit of vacancy improving in some areas as we get further out. It gets a little bit worse third quarter 07 to third quarter 08. But in the downtown, generally vacancy rates are down. Surprisingly, though, the lease rates are as well. Again, we'll crystal ball it and say, is that part of the economy? We don't know how much, but at least we can start to give you some information about what's happening in and around the Americana. Property tax, this is for the project area versus the county. Again, trying to put into context, that 15.7% is mostly the Americana at Brand. LA County had about half of that increase. Going forward, we would like to be able to break down building permits by geographic area so that we can start to see what's happening by geographic area, and again, pre-Americana, post-Americana. We have seen some activity, and we will continue to see some. Obviously, the tenant improvements as the stores come online. We have seen at the Marketplace and the Fashion Center, TJM make big investments with a TJ Maxx store, Marshall Shoes, and the Home Store. We saw that BJ's and Outback and others. There was a comment made by some people at Hyatt that they're looking at Glendale partially because of the Americana. The McGuire Properties, again, gave that as a reason, one of the reasons to go forward with their project. Going forward on an annual report, we can envision this being a one-page summary for you that takes all of those specific numbers. We have the auditor column that would give you in 2004. We can look at previous year what it was, and then current year going forward. The park maintenance and the participation, they're probably going to stay the same. The objectives of the project, as I say, for the most part, those were tied to the building, number one being the elimination of blight, tied to the building of the project. That has been completed, so we haven't reproduced that here. But this would be some numbers that we could start to look at on a go-forward basis. With that, staff is here that has prepared the report and available for any questions you might have.
I have two speaker cards. Why don't we take the speakers and we can formulate our questions with staff during that time. First speaker is Mr. Milano, 3 minutes, followed by Mike Mohill, and we have Greg Astorian after that.
Good afternoon, agency members, city staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I'm glad to be present here for this for the presentation given by staff. I think it's an excellent report. It is my hope that that reports such as this one, the city continues to bring on a continual basis, perhaps every quarter, to assess the success of the other projects for which you have the city has made significant investments. The manner in which the report was done, I think, was very nice by doing the comparisons by area within the Americana, within the neighborhoods, and I believe the taxable sales was overall for the city, I believe. So it gives us an overall assessment of how we're doing, and I think it was a well-designed project. As you all know, the issues that I had with the Americana back in 2004 were in the manner in which the finances were justified. It was not on the issue of creating something new, creating something dynamic, or getting rid of the blight. In one of the areas that I had of contention was the justification given for the open space, the average cost to maintain something that was being given to Caruso affiliated for what was primarily a project that is part of its own design. And as we have seen from other projects by Caruso affiliated, that type of open space is part of the dynamic and the architecture that is embedded into his lifestyle center. For us to consider that we save $360,000, on a continual basis, either on a quarter basis or per month or whatever, I think is a bit of a stretch. That was part of the justification given, that because we don't have to create a park, therefore the savings we could calculate, as opposed to arguing the fact that that particular part of the land that was given to Caruso is part of the integral part of a lifestyle center, which means that addressing the main issues of open space that is accessible to the general public for general public interest still needs to be addressed. It's still there. The need is still there. So the other parts of the report that I think are missing are the original financial justifications as they were given 4 years ago in a fairly good comparison, because, as I mentioned before, the interest on the bond, I think it was $48 million plus whatever other acquisitions were made before, was never considered as part of the return. And I think that should be included so that we can get a realistic picture. Because if the justification is the rest of the attraction of bringing in more real estate investment, well, then it's fine. But let's really take a look and put in that interest on those bonds as part of the overall cost that the city has to bear. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mike Mohill.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Councilman. I'd like to thank the staff for the report on the Americana and what Mr. Molana had to say about accountability and the fact that the open space, the 3 acres of park, was actually part of the design of the Caruso project. So I think we ought to back out before we start praising the Americana. Now, I've always been a big supporter of the Americana. I still am. As nice as this report is, I read in the Glendale News Press critical comments by different people. The other day, they talk about the traffic around the Americana. They talk about the parking fees. They talk about congestion by one. This is by Miss Julie Kirby. Another one by Norma Missan, whatever her name is, talks about we ought to have a theater art district. They expect the Americana to do everything for the city of Glendale, which is not realistic. I'm happy we have congestion around the Americana, but that means we're a vibrant city. With no congestion, go to Compton, Linwood. There you find no congestion and no public interest. Yes, the city of Glendale put its nose out and took a big risk. And I think so far we're ahead of the game. What we haven't done is that, Mr. Mayor, perhaps you and your staff, should write a letter to the editor of Glendale News Press and give a progress report of what's going on and the positive, and even mention some of the negative. Listen, we all should be proud of a criticism, and address that. Let the public know, because all I read in the newspaper is nothing but bad by the people who do write about the Americana. I feel as if I'm the lone wolf to make a comment about that today. I don't see anybody in the audience praising the Americana. I do. I think the fact that we have high end is good. The Galleria has benefited by the Americana. Also mentioned the parking. You know, the parking at the Galleria, they talk about, it's free there. It wasn't free. It was part of a deal made back in the 70s. This is the year, 2000. We're comparing apples with oranges. The American is great. It's bringing in more sales taxes. The marketplace is bringing in business. 2-3 blocks north is bringing in more business sales taxes. What's happening with the Merchant North, like for example, where the Alex Theater is? They want an art center. Well, why don't we fill up the Alex Theater? Glendale is a bedroom community. We were never developed like Pasadena, which had the arts. Either we're a bedroom community or we're an arts center. We can make that decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. Our last speaker is Greg Astorian.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Astorian, Mr. Chair, Mr. Members of Agency, and Mr. Starbird and Mr. Lance of Fame. I, too, had an opportunity to read the report, and quite frankly, I was pleasantly surprised. Given the economic woes that we are in today, when you look at the numbers that we have, it is bordering incredible to get numbers like that. In fact, I did a little bit of analysis on present value, or the financial terms of it. In other words, if you were to look at the revenue stream that is being generated, even based on the 2 months of sales tax increment, along with the property taxes, and you were to project that out to the 30 years or the 25 years, at a cost of about 4 to 5%, which is the cost that the cost of funds for the city, or at least the rate of return that the city can get from actually investing the money in the treasury bonds, you will come to the figure of about $66-67 million. Now, if we were to listen to Mr. Mohill and Herb Milano, we were to take out the $360,000, that figure would be about $65 million. Now, I believe that exceeds the appraised value at the time that this land was given to Caruso for development. So in that department alone, financially, if the trends hold, if the trends continue, the Americana is doing very well. When you start looking at the numbers, the $3.5 million, $3.9 million that is generating on a yearly basis, or will be, in the continuum or the plurality of some other numbers in this city, you will see that Glendale fares, or has done very well in comparison to other municipalities. One of those numbers that I'm going to throw out at you are the foreclosure rates, notices of default, and trustee sales. Throughout this year, from January 1st to date, as we speak, the total number of notices of default, along with the REOs, or foreclosed properties, are less than 300 in totality. When you consider 22,000 single-family homes in the city, about 7,200 condominiums in the city, with a total of 30,000 single-family homes and condominiums, that amounts to about less than 0.5%. And that's great news. I mean, Glendale is holding well. Again, if the trend continues on, there is no question the Americana will do well, and there is no question that the city will fare better than most cities that I know. With that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Astorian. Questions or comments?
Yeah.
From the agency, Mr. Quintero.
Mr. Lanzafame, do you know when the third quarter sales will be available for the Americana? July, August, September?
They typically run 4 to 6 months, so we wouldn't see those until maybe January or February of next year.
I thought it was on. Smaller businesses generally report and remit sales tax revenues on a quarterly basis. Larger ones like auto dealers, department stores will be on a monthly basis. So that's why it takes you almost a full quarter before you begin to get some information.
And you get that directly from the state or the county?
Well, we use a service that gets it from the state.
From the state, yeah. And in terms of the Galleria, the total sales tax revenue from the Galleria 1 and 2 is $1 million, or for the second quarter, $1,280,000. That was the total sales tax from the Galleria. Do you know what the property tax is? Either yearly or...
I don't, but it's around $400 million of assessed value.
So it's
Figure
about-
1%
it's about
of that.
$4 million.
$4 million.
annually.
So $4 million.
Then that's what the general growth's purchase.
Right. Okay. That's all I have.
Which is already on a roll, and
One thing I'll say is, I didn't ask for this report. I know about the lag times on getting good substantial information. Any project opens like they did 1 May, and then we start on this downturn, unexpected downturn, to the extent that it is, to ask for a report, and in my view, those people trying to find fault with Americana say, ha, we told you it's not generating what you'd say. No, I wanted to give it a year. And even then, we're going to have to caveat it with how the economy is doing. I always thought it would be a winner. I still think it will. Spin-off will be great. I was down there yesterday, and I watched the tour bus pull off, and a whole busload of Asians got out with their cameras, walking around taking pictures, saying, oh, you're going to go back to Asia and show the pictures, and we've got to do something like this over here. To me, it's a big winner. The spin-off will be great. I know projects around it are going to be proposed. And Rick Russo always does things first class. If you've been down there the last few days, you're watching the 106-foot Christmas tree go up. What is it, 15,000 lights, 10,000 bulbs, and it's taken them 2 weeks to put it up. And the Christmas ornaments on every single post in there, lights on every single tree. Last weekend, he had the Madagascar troop down there. You could put your head in a hole in the wall and little kids could get pictures taken. His marketing team is doing a great job. It's going to have the entertainers down there all the Christmas holidays. You're going to see a tremendous number of people coming there simply to enjoy themselves, which there's not many places you can do that. It's a safe environment for kids. My wife had the holiday off, went down. Martha Stewart came to Borders, only 1 or 2 places in all the state that she appeared. And my wife overheard people saying, wow, I didn't even know this was here. They came because of Martha Stewart from miles and miles away. And I says, aha, now they know about the Americana, and they will be back. They'll tell their friends. It's all marketing and building that network of communication from people that have come and seen it, and they will come back. So I fully expect within a year or more, you're going to really see crowds appearing there. I suspect that not every store in there that's high-end will survive, not in this economy, but that's normal in any situation like this. Any development, you may see some go out and others come in, but it's going to get better and better. There's critics, you read 3 or 4 critics in the paper. The last time I looked, as I say, there's over 207,000 people there. If 3 or 4 people want to complain about it, fine. Don't ever come to the Americana. Don't shop in Glendale. Go somewhere else. This is the best thing that happened to Glendale in my lifetime. I think it's just going to be great, and I'm sure that when we see these figures a year from the time it started, it's going to be very, very impressive. We did a number on Burbank and Pasadena this time. Thank you.
Well, I just hope they don't take that clip, Dave, and send it out there, just the part where you're telling people not to go to the Americana.
That was back in May when I figured enormous crowds trying to get in there, and it happened for a week or two.
Mr. Mayor, I do think he was talking about those 2 or 3 people.
I recognize. I was
Did I
saying,
just say something wrong?
I just hate to see them take that out of context.
Oh, no, those few people. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
There's always detractors.
I think it is interesting to look at these numbers. We all know that there's an economic, a difficult economic situation. I think we all know that, but we still have to look at the numbers. And I think it is interesting, especially when we consider a lot of the comments that were made prior to the referendum on Americana A, B, and C, about predictions, what would happen, not just in terms of sales numbers, but in terms of losses in various areas of the city, or potential gains. And I thank you for including Montrose, because Montrose was a very interesting situation when when Galleria opened in the 70s, where they were really socked as well and lost 40 stores in the first year up there. This is a different time. Malls are not a brand new invention, and they don't carry with them the kind of intense curiosity, I think. But still, the prediction was about a 10% downturn in sales. That was the prediction from Mr. Caruso's people with regard to even outlying areas like Montrose when they came to talk to us about it at the time. And here we see about a 10% downturn in sales. It's interesting to follow, because the prediction originally was that after a year that you'd see those numbers change and level off. But I will be most interested to see July, August, and September, not so much to see whether or not Americana is performing the way we thought it would if there had been no economic downturn, but to see how all the different areas in the city are faring with regard to Americana in the given economic climate. So I'll be interested to see how Mid-Brand does, the Exchange and Galleria and so on in July, August, and September. We know that the information is not available as of yet. Is that correct? That is correct for Americana. What about for some of these other regions?
They're all reporting at the same time.
All right, so there's really nothing available. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So they all report at the same time except for the large department stores, right? They do a monthly...
Yeah. But Americana is not on a different track than others.
Right. Okay.
And I just have a few thoughts on this report. I was not part of the wise group of councilmen that approved the Americana and then ultimately went to a referendum. And when the election rolled around, the only thing, they say, well, are you for the Americana, are you against it? By that time, it had already been, the die had been cast. But the one comment I made is that I'm going to make darn sure that Caruso builds it exactly as he promised. And I think in that category, there's no dispute that he built it exceeding the standards that he set in terms of quality, in terms of materials, in terms of lighting, music, also in terms of management. It's an extremely well-managed property. He's spending a lot of money on concierges, security guards, undercover guards, ambassadors, etc. Now, a lot of that is from the city's requirement. We said we want to keep this place squeaky clean, but he's certainly keeping to his word. We were very forewarned about the traffic. The traffic is going to be incredible. The traffic is going to create gridlock. Well, that certainly did not occur. Even an opening weekend, the traffic was still very manageable. What we are seeing is a very happy Glendale Galleria, at least everyone in the management that I've spoken to, and they'll say that off the record, not on the record. due to their history with the Americana project, folks are parking in the Galleria, and they're walking through, window shopping at Tiffany's and Stuart Weitzman and some of the other high-end stores, and on their way back through the Galleria to get to their car, they say, well, let me stop at the Gap, or let me stop at some of these other stores. And their sales are going up, clearly, I think, as a direct result of the Americana. Traffic in the Galleria, I don't see any figures on that, but foot traffic on the Galleria, no doubt, has increased tremendously. And as we all knew, that there would be a symbiotic relationship between these two properties. They're not stealing each other's customers, but they're building in a synergistic way to increase the sales for both properties. And Mr. Weaver touched on it. The one, you can fault Mr. Crusoe for many things. Maybe he's too flashy. Maybe he's too thin. Maybe he's too rich. But he works to market the Galleria, the Americana, and the city of Glendale to no end. He is always figuring out new ways to promote not just the retail stores. When Tiffany's comes in, it's splashed all over the news. LA Magazine is there. There's not a red carpet, but an aqua carpet rolled up to get the publicity. Martha Stewart, as Dave said, picks Barnes & Noble to come in and do her book signing. The Christmas tree, he could have put maybe a 40-foot tree and we still would have been in awe, but he goes and outdoes it with a 106-foot tree, and that's going to bring people to Glendale. And you've seen I think there was something in the news when they brought it in on the crane. It's going to be an incredible place at Christmas time over the holidays as well. So he didn't just build it and wash his hands of the city or the project. He's in there hustling, doing everything he can to make sure it's a success, even in these very difficult financial times. And I just want to talk about the play area. Every time I go to the Americana, I am just stunned at the level of enthusiasm I see in the children that are playing on what is perhaps the most luxurious play area maybe in the United States, where parents can sit not on splintered wooden benches, but luxurious chaise lounges with a cappuccino in one hand and cream puffs? What do they have down around the corner? These
burritos.
Beer Papa cream puffs.
Fresh-made cream puffs and crepes and Jody Maroney sausages, and the children are there. Parents bring the children there just for that play area. So whether we called it a park or whether we didn't call it a park or whether it's semi-private or private, everyone is allowed to bring their children there and look at the fountains and enjoying the splash and the light display. It really is something that we were fortunate to have in Glendale. And there's no doubt, and this morning I spoke to Director Lanzafame. I said, these numbers, these projected numbers that we're measuring the actual numbers against, you fudged those, didn't you? Didn't you put them way down low so we'd look good? And he says, no, absolutely not. That these are the true actual numbers that they had predicted would occur or should occur. And even in this terrible economy, those numbers are exceeded. I wish the best of success to the Americana. I wish the best of success to all the merchants in the downtown Glendale area and throughout Glendale as well, all the way up to Montrose, as well as our car dealers. They play a very important part in our economic engine in Glendale, as well as play the role of making Glendale a very fun place to live. So I wish them the best of success. They're all in this city together, and hopefully we'll get past this bump in our economy and move on to great success. So
If I could add, for those of you who are listening, try to jot this down. The tree lighting is this Saturday at 8 p.m. All the lights in the trees, I suppose, will all go on simultaneously. Santa Claus will be there, of course, in Santa's house. There will be entertainment, as usual. if you've been to the ones at the Grove last year, and remember, the Grove is much smaller, he had 35,000 people at the Grove. We expect, well, I don't know what he's expecting here, maybe even more. So if you're interested in coming down to it, you better get there early. Don't arrive at 8. This will be the first test of the parking structure with a large crowd coming in. It should be a great evening. I understand our fire marshal will be there to cut off traffic trying to come in once it's overloaded. But it'll be interesting to see what their count is on people coming to the event on Saturday. So it's the opening of Christmas season, so try to make plans to come down there and enjoy the festivities.
Mr. Draymond.
Mr. Chair, I understand that Martha Stewart is actually being used as a tree topper ornament for this tree. Is there any? I noticed, Mr. Weaver, you were reading the perfect pie crust recipe from Martha Stewart. Was that as a result of the?
No, my family's told me which pies they want me to cook this year. While I have my own recipe for 35 years, I'm looking to see if there's any updates on it. Let's see if I can improve on my excellent cooking already.
Well, we hope you share that with us.
I'm doing a French apple.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well.
You have my address?
Yeah, I have your address.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All the holiday cooking.
So yes, get back to us, Bill, with those second quarter, well, the third quarter numbers. I know, as Mr. Draymond said, that many shoppers, many of our residents heeded the advice of Mr. Weaver and stayed back for a couple months till it thinned out. So we're expecting to see a spike beginning July 1st in those sales tax numbers.
Mr. Najarian, let me give you a hint. If you want to eat like the Americana, we go down there Sunday morning, 10 a.m. when cheesecake opens. The Granville opens earlier. You get down there at 10 o'clock, I'll drive up to the 4th floor. I park right next to the escalator and the elevators. Go down, the door opens, we're first in, and seats. You want to try it out, that's the time to go. Don't necessarily go in the evening hours on a weekend. That's when it gets loaded. By the time we leave Cheesecake, it's getting pretty full. So the best thing you can do, get down there when it opens, have a brunch or something at Cheesecake. It's easy parking.
Of course, Mr. Weaver has a parking place with his name on it. He doesn't tell you that on the 4th floor by the elevator.
Not yet, but it works in early morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report, Mr. Lanzafame. And what else do we have for the agency?
Report only.
Any comments? Any agency members?
We have some new business.
New business.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that the agency general counsel be and hereby is authorized, along with contract counsel, to appeal the matter of Glendale Redevelopment Agency versus County of Los Angeles et al., Los Angeles Superior Court case number BCBS 111264. The agency general counsel and contract counsel shall provide periodic reports regarding the status of the appeal.
Is there a second?
Second.
If there's no discussion, we'll take roll.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian, Chairman Najarian.
Yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Agencies adjourned.